Welcome to Construction Genius. My guest is Jason Perez. He is the co-founder and CEO of Yards, and he is an expert at rental equipment utilization. That is what we're going to be talking about here today, how to utilize equipment efficiently and effectively, why some construction companies are experts at doing that and why others fail, and how you can make sure that you're not wasting money or losing money when it comes to your equipment utilization. So enjoy my conversation here today with Jason. Thank you for listening to Construction Genius. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Jason, welcome to Construction Genius.
Thank you very much, Eric. Happy to be here. Excited to be part of the show.
One thing I love about construction is there's so many ways to make money, but unfortunately that means there's also so many ways to lose money when it comes to building a construction project. One of the places that I've found that construction companies don't exploit profit opportunities enough is in equipment utilization. What is the biggest challenge you've seen in your career that construction companies have with equipment utilization?
Well, that's a fantastic question. And it's also something that people don't focus enough on. You know, we focus on labor, we focus on, even back to the office type things. How can you find technology for better estimating, better this, better that? But the reality is, depending on the type of project, you could be bleeding anywhere between 15 to 25% of that project, right? Or a portion of that project. And then you're just not focused on it. And so, what we see as the biggest problem out there, and this is from being in the industry for 25 years now, is that it's a very simple problem. People don't know what's out there. They really don't. They don't know where it's at. And sometimes they don't even know that it was there in the first place. Because what happens is you have the stuff you own, but you also have the stuff you rent. And sometimes people are tracking all the things they own very well, but they forget about the things they rent. And they forget, well, they're paying a premium for those, right? And the idea of paying a premium is you can parachute it in and you can parachute it out. So your overall cost of that asset is lower than the cost of ownership, right? But that's not necessarily what always happens. People end up renting things, they sit, and next thing you know, you're paying for more for a rental than it would have been if you just owned that piece of equipment and had, yes, a depreciating asset, but nonetheless an asset you can sell later on.
Yeah, that's interesting. Tell us a little bit more about your background in the construction industry.
Yeah, so I started very early. My father was an electrical contractor. So my life started in crawling in attics of residential houses with insulation, just filling my pores in 120 degree weather in the high desert of California. I mean, it was pretty miserable.
Nice. Where in California?
So we grew up in our grade school years through high school was Palmdale, Lancaster. It's the Antelope Valley. It's high desert, so it's 50 or 60 miles outside of Los Angeles. Mojave Desert, super hot, always windy. But you know what? In the 80s, just beautiful people. I mean, we had barbecues in the neighborhood. You can ride your dirt bike right out of the garage. It was a great, great place to be raised. That's how I got introduced to it. And the story kind of takes some weaves and turns because I was supposed to go to the Marine Corps, and that was my dream as a child. I wanted to go into intelligence in the Marine Corps. So went to school, triple emphasis or triple minor and double major in international relations and economics. And then was planning on going to OCS. And 1 week before supposing to ship out to OCS, they medically declined me. And so I took it pretty hard. Oh yeah, it was not a good time for me. And I took it pretty hard. And then my dad, pretty much said, "Hey, you can't be a crybaby." And guess what? The whole family's in construction, so put on some boots and go make it happen. And I fought it for about 3 years. I'm going to be honest, Eric. I was like, construction, That's not my dream. I'm supposed to be out somewhere in a hole with a gun doing things, right? Saving the world. And I started to get an affinity for it, and I started becoming good at it. And I started realizing, you're not just putting up sticks, you're not just laying concrete or putting out electrical. You're building healthcare systems. You're building networks for people to be able to make phone calls to their family. And when you start looking at, and you work in places like a NICU where families, are caring for their child, and you know that you're keeping them safe because of, infection control measures or whatever it might be, it starts to become more personal, right? And purpose starts to drive in your life a little differently.
Can I ask you about that a little bit? Because I can imagine the disappointment you had when you were medically declined, and then your dad was basically telling you to suck it up.
Yeah, yeah.
If your dad hadn't, I know it's kind of hard to answer this question really, but how much do you credit your dad with his willingness to kind of have that hard conversation with you, with the way that your life has progressed? Was that a massive thing or just a little part of it?
No, it's paramount. My whole family has played a paramount role. My parents were both born in Cuba. My grandparents brought them over at early years, and so the idea of landing in this country and having the greatest opportunity to do anything that you want was ingrained in each one of the boys. And I'm the middle of three boys, and all three of us are entrepreneurs. Every single one of us, right? And so
Interesting.
it was ingrained in us, and this fighting, go make it happen. And you can't sulk. You can control your destiny, right? And it's not going to necessarily the path, right? The path to the top of the mountain might not go the way you want, but you can get to the top of the mountain as long as you keep your vision and your sight there. You can make it. And so that was kind of the story that we were given from the day that we were born all the way till now. We still have these conversations as a family, and I think it's paramount that each one of us, right, continue to pass that legacy on.
I think it's interesting though, just, I know there's probably many parents listening to this and their kids come across disappointments, and it's interesting just for you to hear about how your dad helped you to process that disappointment and the influence that had. So that's why I asked you about that little bit.
Yeah, thank you. It's a big deal.
It's awesome. Let's get back to this idea then of equipment utilization. When is the time to rent and when is the time to buy a piece of equipment? What is a good framework that contractors can use to make sure that they're renting at the right time and buying at the right time?
Yeah, so the most sophisticated actually have pretty robust spreadsheets where they go to estimate a project, they have the rates already from them, they're plugging them in, they're looking and they're going, okay, if we hit 80% of the original equipment cost, then we're going to buy that piece of equipment. Some people say if we hit 70%, some people have 50%. And what we see, and it's quite a vast array across these different contractors because each one has a different strategy around it. Some of them buy used equipment, and so their thresholds look differently, and they've already hit that depreciating curve, right, when they buy that used equipment. So they go, hey, if I'm going to rent it and we get to 50% or to 70% of that equipment cost, I'm just going to go out and buy it because I know I'm going to be able to flip this. Most of the depreciation already happened. And look, anybody that bought a piece of equipment before 2020 is loving life, right?
Yeah, right.
Because all of a sudden there's a supply shortage and equipment that was used was going just as expensive as equipment that was new. I mean, it was a completely inverse flipped type market and nobody can get anything anywhere. But rule of thumb, right? You need to be looking and going, all right, I'm going to rent this. How long am I going to rent it? And what we find is when you're going through that process, you typically can make some pretty wise decisions. And some people want to keep capital, off their capital expenses off their books, and others, don't. So there's a pretty big strategy. And I think you just had, was it Timothy Wingate on there talking about some of these issues in a recent podcast, right? And so I'm not a financial guy. I don't want to pretend to be, but I can tell you that if you're looking and you're renting and you're not tracking the end date and you're not getting notifications of that end date, and you don't have visibility to what's out there, you're bleeding money. And it's not bleeding money to, minute percentages. We have customers that are saving, 20, 30% because they finally start looking at these rental spends, and they start creating this processes around it. And it's significant. It's significant.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that, because I can just picture that challenge where, I know what I own, but then the rentals, it comes and it goes. My superintendent, just goes out and rents something because he needs it. And,
That's right.
and all of a sudden there's this bleeding of the money that's happening in the company. Why do you think contractors have a real challenge with keeping track of everything in terms of rental equipment?
One is priority. I think that me as a project manager that lived a life on the GC side that was very aggressive, there were so many things in a contract that I was more worried about, and there were so many things on a subcontractor that I had to be worried about, and there were conflicts in drawings and so many other places that I can get bit. That's where all my focus was. And as an industry, yeah, I was at an event where it was the economist for AGC said that construction's 40% efficient, right? So the people that go out and work are only doing work 40% of the time. The people that, are getting work done, though, I say, are doing work 120% of the time, right? So you have this group of people that aren't, and then you have this group of people that are, and they're so overworked that they're focusing on these high value components, but they don't realize it just hasn't been in their vision, right? They haven't been groomed. Nobody's talked about it. It just hasn't been this industry topic where people get excited about it. But the reality is, it's a major component, and they're bleeding a lot of money, and it just has never been part of the conversation. Rental is, hey, we're getting something, we're making a good decision, we're not buying it, right? We get to expense it, and we're only going to have it for a little bit of time. And everybody thinks it's going to be a little bit of time. But everybody drives down a freeway and sees equipment parked on the side of the freeway. Everybody drives down the block, they see a piece of equipment sitting on this job site that's, rusting away, right? I've heard stories of trees starting to grow in buckets of these loaders because somebody rents it, don't even remember it.
Yeah, it's interesting. So let's talk about the managing of rental equipment. At what level in a construction company do you recommend that people focus when it comes to the management of equipment?
Well, first off, I always think that they truly need if you are renting anywhere over a $250,000 a year, you should have somebody dedicated to managing equipment, right? And if you own a certain amount of fleet, and it depends on the threshold again, but same idea. You need to be designating and going, all right, when do we make that decision? Because there's two places you're going to bleed. On the rental side, you're going to bleed when you go to rent it and you're not getting the right rate, or you're going to bleed when you forget it and it's sitting there. And as you mentioned, utilization is a massive issue. It's not being utilized, and you're paying for equipment that's not being utilized. On the own side, you have a completely different problem. Everybody wants a skid steer. Everybody wants a reach lift on their project, right? Because skid steer is very useful, and a reach lift, everything gets delivered, right? But how many reach lifts do you need on a project? And should a skid steer be on every project? Everybody likes to have one, but it doesn't mean you need one. And so you really need to be dedicating somebody that can make these decisions financially. And that's like the first very basic step. If you don't have somebody championing the issue, you're never going to get anything done. So you've got to make a decision at a corporate level, strategically. Is equipment going to be important to us? And if it is, we've got to dedicate a champion to this that can live, eat, and breathe it. We're not going to have a project manager or a superintendent be focused on equipment and laying down, 1,000,000 yards of concrete. Like, it just doesn't make sense.
Right. Let me ask you about that then. So let's say I hire someone and they're going to run my equipment. They're going to manage my equipment, both rental and owned. How do I set them up for success when it comes to interacting with the field? Because, the field, they want it now, and they want the best.
That's right.
And as the equipment manager, I might be saying, well, you may want it now, but somebody else needs it first. And as far as the best is concerned, I want to manage our finance as well. And so that creates a tension between the two teams, so to speak, the equipment utilization manager and then the field team. How do you manage that tension?
Yeah, well, it starts with leadership, and I think you're obviously clearly big on leadership and speak volumes to many people about how to get there as a leader. You've got to have somebody that's leading the ship, and your equipment guy shouldn't necessarily be the guy solving the problem. He should be implementing the solution to that problem. So, as a business owner, as an executive, you've got to own the problem first. You're hiring somebody to implement solutions. You're not hiring somebody to just manage all the problems, right? Because those just grow. So that's first step. Second, your job is to give them tools. You got to give them tools, and you got to create an environment where communication happens and visibility and transparency happens within the two teams. You have to do that, because it's when people stop saying things that they assume the worst. It's in our human nature. If all of a sudden you're calling me every week, right? Every day, every week, and then you stop calling me for 2 days, you not calling me is what starts getting me worried, right?
Yeah.
You can love me more than you ever have in your life, but guess what? All of a sudden you stop calling me, I'm going to think the worst. And it's just human nature. I don't know what that, we're driven by fear and we're driven by love. And fear takes a hold when we don't have transparency and we don't have visibility of certain things. And so we have to provide that environment for communication. And so you give these tools for your team to come together, whether it's automation for the teams to see all the rentals coming in, whether it's other asset management tools on the own side, could be telematic tools, could just be simple, maintenance and work order type things, could just be, some people use spreadsheets, right? And if you're a small enough firm and you can use Excel, great, right? But at a certain point, Excel has limitations, and it's not going to be automated, and it's not going to provide the transparency that you need. So, again, you got to gauge where you're at as a company. You got to figure out, all right, one, who's going to be the champion? Two, what tools am I going to give to them? And then how do I create that environment to ensure that we have collaboration between the field and the office, right? And there's a very strict strategy around it. Great organizations out there too, Eric. I mean, the AEMP, right, for equipment managers. There's a lot of different organizations people can get involved with and learn a lot.
Would you like to be able to increase the effectiveness of your leadership team right away? There's one simple way that you can do that, and that is by going to Amazon and purchasing my book. Oh, yes. It's the middle of the podcast, so it's time for commercials. We're not selling Manscaped. We're not selling Athletic Greens. No, we're selling this book. And why are we selling this book? Because it's an awesome book. And you should purchase it for you and your leaders. It's Construction Genius, effective, hands-on, practical, simple, no BS leadership, strategy, sales, and marketing advice. And it is exclusively for construction companies. The best way to utilize the book is this. Purchase 10 copies, because what happens when you purchase 10 copies is you shoot me an email at eric@constructiongenius.com. And you say, Eric, I've got 10 copies. And then what I'll do is schedule a question and answer session with the leaders that you give the book to, so they can ask me any questions about the book that they like. And I'll provide a bonus training session as part of the Q&A. And that would cost you $2,000 for a session like that. I'll do it absolutely free. And all you have to do is spend about $200 buying these books. Anyway, check that out. The book is well worth it. Read all the reviews on Amazon, and you'll see plenty of 5-star reviews from real construction leaders who've benefited from reading the book. I know you're going to love it. And so buy that, benefit from it, and improve your leadership. Now, back to our conversation. In your experience working with a number of contractors, what are the savvy contractors doing that the less savvy contractors aren't when it comes to managing their equipment?
The most savvy try to solve the problem themselves already, right? And they've built these absolutely extraordinary Excel spreadsheets that are linked of a million different places, and then go to BI tools and they feed all this information so they can start to make these decisions. And they've built this process from estimating all the way through project startup. And then they have regular meetings throughout the project, and then a project closeout to understand where they're at with the budget. So they've defined this is the process we're going to take all the way through, right? And then those people graduate and they start implementing better tools, right? So you start getting things like telematics involved. You mentioned utilization. Is equipment being used or not? Some of these rental companies have tools, they have GPS and telematics on there. They can give you that utilization, and then you can set certain alerts and notifications around it. You can do that again on your owned assets, right? If you get the right telematics partner. Part of the biggest friction, and one of the things that we try to solve as a company was, bringing all that data into one place, right? Because, you can log into United, you can log into Sunbelt, you can log into Herc, and you can pull that data individually. But then you have to aggregate it all together, and then you have to split it per project, and then you have to send that data to each project. And you're loading into the BI tool, trying to get different type of data. And then you have your owned assets. So now how do you take those owned assets and put it in the same place? So there are tools out there that will take all that, automate that process. So nobody has to manually type anything, right? It gets automated, it brings it in, they have that visibility, and now they're meeting weekly, right? What's here? What do we need to call off? What do we need to move somewhere else? Based on alerts, on notifications of has it been used or not? Or, right, I set a deadline. We're going to have this rental for 3 weeks. That's going to alert me at the end of the 3 weeks. So people are getting smarter. They're going out. They're trying to build things out of no code. They're trying to, build sophistication around Excel, or they're going out and they're finding tech that can solve it, right?
Okay. So how did you come? Because Yards is very much playing in the space of equipment utilization, rental equipment utilization. How did you begin to look at the problem, clarify the problem, and then begin to solve the problem with the work that you're doing with Yards?
So it was all customer driven. Our customer discovery process is pretty in depth, pretty intense, and maybe the best word for it is intimate. We sit down with customers regularly. And even before their customers, when we started for about a year before we had one customer on the platform, we were sitting down talking to people going, hey, how are you managing these things? And we walked in and saw everything from 9 whiteboards in one person's office. And I mean, these whiteboards were 5x4 or 6x4 whiteboards, 9 of them with magnets that were cut out and written the type of equipment, and they would move it right from project to project. And we go, okay, visually, this is something that they need to be able to see. And we found, oh, well, they're moving things by crew. They're not moving things just by project, right? And then we saw spreadsheets where things were color coordinated and they were split by different rental companies. And then we saw how they looked at how they spent the money. Okay, well, there's a rent versus buy type of behavior if it hits a certain threshold. So we started building these things all into Yards based on customers saying, this is how I do it today. And we listened and we listened and we listened. And like, it's not that we took everybody's advice and implemented all of it. But I'll tell you, when you build tech that's very agile, and you build it from scratch, you can move pretty quickly and you can implement a lot of stuff that people will say, hey, this is the way I do it and this is the way I need it. And we continue to stay focused like that. We just finished building a work order system that was all driven by 2 of our customers that said, hey, this is the way we do it. We want photos, we want inspections on it, we want this, we want that. Awesome. And we use them. It was a complete focus group.
So what is an issue that your customers have brought to you that's within your wheelhouse that you say to them, you know what, technology is not going to solve this issue. You need a different way to address that challenge.
I just recently dealt with this. And when I say recently, I was on a phone call this morning dealing with this, and I've been dealing with it for the last 3 months. So here's what happens a lot of times when you're the tech company coming in. and you're providing transparency. And so this company is a phenomenal company. They have great culture, and they empower their employees really well. But they're fragmented in 5 different places, and so the idea of these 5 different shops all of a sudden coming into one system, everybody is really excited about it. Everybody, every manager, everywhere, they're like, yes, one company, let's do this. But what technology can't solve is someone wanting to do maintenance on one interval, somebody else wanted to do maintenance on a different interval, and then at the end of the day, people just feeling like this is my domain, right? Don't mess with my domain. And tech it doesn't fix that. Everybody thinks you get tech, it's going to bring everybody on the same page. No, it provides visibility, right? You're all going to look at the same paper. You're all going to see the same words. But, just like the Bible, I don't know how many people interpret it a million different ways, right?
Sure.
I mean, that's literally what tech does. All of a sudden, everybody looks at the same paper and they're like, this is great. Here's what it says. And then the guy next to him goes, that's not what it says. This is what it says.
Right.
Tech's never going to fix that. Everybody thinks tech is all of a sudden going to bring this kumbaya. We're all sitting around with a guitar, singing around a fire. And it doesn't work that way. It still takes leadership. It has to.
Okay, so then that leads me to my next question, and it's all about the implementation of tech. And I know there's been a few podcast episodes where we've discussed this, but I want to talk to you about it because you have a construction background, you moved into the tech space, you're dealing with just the very issues that we're describing here. So if I'm looking as a CEO to implement any kind of tech into my business, what are some basic steps I need to take in order for that to be successful?
Yeah. So the simplest thing everybody talks about is, hey, I'm going to get buy-in, right? And I'm going to get early adoption from people that know how to use tech. That's like the first thing everybody says. Let's get somebody, early adopters that love tech and do it. That's great for a pilot, but that's not a rollout, right? I tell people, if you really want to know whether it's going to work, get the guy that hates tech. Get him in the focus group. You have to. Get him in the focus group. Bring him in. If you can make him a champion, then you can make the rest of the people a champion. So your focus group really needs to be diverse. It needs to be the guy that's about to retire, that hates tech. Like my older brother, he was a superintendent all the way through, and then he started his own company in a completely different industry. But he told me all the time I was an idiot for being in the office, pushing paper and behind a computer all the day, right? He did not want anything to do that. He's like, I will push people to work and I'll keep people on schedule. Don't put a computer in front of me. I don't care about it, right? You want that guy on your team. If he's ever going to have to touch that tech, bring him in early and let him complain and let him talk through it and then let him see the light because he will be your biggest champion, right? He's going to be born again, all into tech and excited about what it can do for him. So don't be afraid.
Yeah, let me ask you this. What are some of the legitimate objections that come from old school folks that you've got to say as a tech person, you know what, dude, you're right. And that's something that we're going to have to take into account?
Yeah, two main things that I find with the problem with tech today, and I've seen a lot of tech out there. When we're building our tech, we took this into consideration. And by the way, I'm typically the step for the UI UX for it because I am not very techie. I've always been a contract guy. I've always been a computer RFI submittal guy, but I've never been a techie guy. So two things. One, tech should automate current processes. It should not change current processes. Tell people that all the time. People built the Empire State Building in like a year and 45 days. Could you imagine anything today being built that fast, Eric? Ever?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It's not going to happen, right? There are certain things, the way that people worked, the way that people did things, the way that people communicated, there's certain things that we shouldn't change because they were good, Yeah. So tech has to, the major flaw in tech is it's not automating what people do. They're just trying to create a new way to do it. And that's not healthy for the old school. It's not healthy for where we're going as an industry. The second thing is, my goodness, you can't design tech the way you design or B2B type tech for an old industry like construction, like you design something for a consumer or you design something for millennials. Over and over again in our tech team, they'll send me something and the modal opens, right? A modal, for those people that don't know, is a little screen that opens when you click on something. So it doesn't take you off the screen. It just creates a little window inside.
Yep.
And
like a chat box on a website or something like that.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like a chat box. And over again, we have that now like in our standards. People forget though. They're like, yeah. I say, how do you close it? Oh, just click out of the box, it'll close. I'm like, no, I'm in construction. I want an X box, right? Give me the little box with an X on the top right, because that's where it is on every other thing in Windows. And by the way, I want a button that says close, right? And if I'm going to save it, I want a button that says save, right?
Yep.
Like I want buttons that explain what I'm doing. And if you can give me a little eye next to it, that if I hover and it explains what it does, even better. Right? Because
let's just stop right there, because I think this is vital. So you're a CEO of a construction company. You've identified a tech that's actually going to solve a problem in terms of automating a current process. But then the user interface is something that is designed for Gen Z or millennials. And then your Gen Xers and your boomers are looking at it and saying, I don't even know how to work this. And that creates unnecessary friction.
That's right. That's right. So everything, I try not to be a bottleneck. Our chief product officer thinks like me now. It took some grooming because he's a tech guy. But everything that we have in our system has an Xbox and a close button. And they always laugh at me because I'm the Xbox close button guy. But you know what? Our customers love it. They never have a second guess. How do you close this? How do you open it? How do I filter it? No, everything has an explanation. Everything, and it still looks clean. We just add the extra little touch, it's not crazy.
I think that's really interesting because that can address some of the hidden friction that the old school has that you're not even aware of, that when they see, you show them the tool and they're like, dude, this feels weird. I don't like it. I'm not that guy. And if you just change the design of it, that would impact the way that it's adopted by your company.
That's right. Because most of them have used, whether it's Facebook or Amazon. I mean, people have started adopting, even the latest generation, right, have started adopting tech on their phone. So the idea of adopting tech is not the friction. It's that construction tech has sucked many times for them to be able to use. And now, they've been burnt by it so many times. They don't want to use it, and rightfully so. We failed them, and I say we. I've only been in tech for 5 years, and I'm really a construction guy. But I feel like tech failed us for a very, very, very long time for the field. You can, however, if you're a GC or you're an architect, you can put on VR goggles, walk through a building before it's built. I mean, it's cool, right? I mean, this is flashy, fun, neat stuff. But if you're the guy out there managing equipment, what have we given you? Well, how have we said, hey, we care about your experience? And we haven't. We haven't until, I would say, in the last couple of years, people started listening.
Yeah, I like that. So tell us exactly what Yards does, the problems that you solve, and then how people can get in touch with you.
Yeah, so Yards solves two problems, really. The first is where we started in the industry, which is the rental aggregation side. So big companies rent a lot of equipment, and they're renting from, the big guys, could be mom and pops, whatever it might be. And as we talked about it, they'll log into all these different websites, or they'll get emails with on-rent reports. And they're dealing with 5 different spreadsheets. And these spreadsheets all have 10 different projects. And they all have different equipment ordered by different people. And the POs are only 50% accurate. And Eric, I want you to think about this, right? This is where we're at as an industry. We allow rental companies to put in information that is only accurate 50% of the time. I'm going to order a piece of equipment. You're providing me a service. I'm going to pay for that piece of equipment, right? But you cannot put an accurate PO. You can't put it on the right project. You can't put it that it was ordered by the right person. That's 50% of the time. So we take all that data right? And without the customer having to do anything, we aggregate it into yards and we allow them to have the visibility. We place it on the correct project by using all this regressive logic that goes, okay, where was it delivered? What's the PO number? What's the project name? Who ordered? We look at all these different factors, and we're now at over 99% success in making it go to the right project for that customer. So we take 50% bad data, cleanse it, put it on the right project, and then we give an array of tools around that. So you have an end date, it's going to alert the project team saying, guys, you only want it for 3 weeks. Boop, boop, boop. Make sure that you call this off today, because if not, you forget it and it goes for the next week or the next month or 5 months. I mean, we had somebody that said they had equipment for 18 months. And I know there's people listening here that probably can beat that, but 18 months it sat on the back of a project and they didn't even know. They just kept them paying the bill. So we aggregate it, we give them the tools, and they do that. And then the second problem we solve is really on the own side, because what we found on the own side is there's some really great inspection tools out there. There's some really great work order type systems out there. And there might be good dispatch tools that are out there. What we did is we said, let's build something that's at the upper tier, right? Special ops, like let's build the best out there that can be the best work order system that allows inspections, photos, tasks, notes, tracks every activity that happens in there, right? With really clean schedules for hours, miles, and dates. Let's build a dispatch tool that sends emails to people, Google links to go where they need to go, right? Let's give a tool checkout with receipts that checks with people every week to confirm that they have what they have. And we built this array of suite around owned assets so that they don't have to get one and then go, all right, let's API to this one, or they don't have an API. So what are we going to do? And then we end up with a hodgepodge of different tech. We thought, let's give tech to where you can get it all in one place and, and not break the bank, right? Because tech today shouldn't break the bank. We've built everything in-house and we're still not breaking the bank for our customers. And people go overseas and they're breaking the bank. I mean, I think if you're very careful, that you're, again, very intentional, and you're willing to get intimate with your customers, you can build things efficiently, and you can build things that people really, really want to use.
So you've been in the tech side of the business for 5 years. What's the biggest mistake you've made in building your business, and how did you overcome that mistake?
Biggest mistake, starting a tech company without a CTO. That was my biggest mistake, Eric. I mean, it's kind of like, hey, I'm going to start an electrical company and not have an electrician. Yeah, it was, that was tough. And we had really good advisors. Don't get me wrong. I had an awesome tech advisor, Michael Sangbush, that really mentored me through this process, and Shane Matthews and Dan Hughes and Brian Macaluso and Ron Anatori, Wes Parks. I mean, all these guys are advisors that came in and not paid a dime. They just said, hey, we want to help you. We want to help you succeed. And so that was the biggest mistake. And I'm going to be honest, Eric, I tried really hard to find that person. It's hard to find that person unless you're already a tech person. Nobody wants to go, oh, you're a construction guy? Oh yeah, I want to go with you and start a tech company. Like nobody, no matter how much success you had in the construction world, it's not sexy to walk into Georgia Tech or to walk into one of these incubators and go, hey guys, by the way, I've had a lot of success in construction. I want to build a tech company. They go, yeah, construction? Nah, I like dating sites, or I like food delivery, or I like, like there's all these other industries that people just get excited about. And construction apparently was not one of them.
It's interesting. As someone who has that construction background and you've been in the world of tech, where do you see tech having the biggest impact in the next 5 to 10 years?
Wow, I wasn't prepared
in
for that one,
construction
Eric.
specifically.
Construction specifically. I think we are going to have to get better than 40% efficiency. I think we're going to start to track production better, right? And not in a way, hopefully not in a way where we're violating privacy and we're making people feel like they're being watched. But I hope we get to a place where these tools are making people more efficiently. more efficient, and hopefully inspiring people to do work better, right? Like that.
Yep.
That's where I think, and I hope tech, and it needs to. To me, it's not about where it will; it's where it has to. And there's a
Okay.
lot of money to be saved in equipment, but people have to be productive, and we got to get them excited about these tools to make them more productive. And I don't think a machine, not to say anything bad about machines that can pour concrete into walls, but we're a people business, we're a relationship business, and we're to me going to be driven by manpower for a very, very, very long time. So how do we
Yep.
continue to give those people tools to be on the job, to get what they need, to work with less friction, to do less paperwork, to deal with less regulation, to allow them to do the jobs that they love to do? Because it's beautiful for anybody that's ever done electrical, that's bent conduit up a wall and have seen, 5, 6, 20, 100 pieces of conduit bent in the same direction going up. I mean, it's an art. It's an art. And we need to be proud about that. A snake belly on a weld, right? You get a nice weld down. It's beautiful. And we need to be proud about that. We need to be excited about that. And we need to give tools to people so that they can get to work. They can do the things they love to do, feel that artistic part, feel the pride that they have from building with their hands. And tech can solve some of that. What we don't want to do is create more roadblocks. We can't do that.
So tell us how we can get in touch with you, Jason.
Yeah, I love people emailing me. So if they want to email me direct, it's Jason, Jason, at yards, which is YARDZ, .com. So Jason at yards.com. Please jump on. You can go to our website, yards.com. There's a book a demo button there. If you want a personal demo, again, send an email. I'd love to do it. I'd love to meet you. You can tell me I'm wrong. I love hearing that as well, because that's how we've gotten so good at what we do. Or you can say, this is great, right? Just reach out. I'd love it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Jason, I really appreciate you coming on the show today. Thank you for your insights into the rental equipment world and into the world of technology. And I do wish you all the best with your business.
Thank you very much, Eric. I appreciate being a guest. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to my interview today with Jason Perez. Feel free to email him, jason@yards.com, and go to his website, yards.com. That's yards with a Z. And see how simple assets can be. I tell you. Also, I have another request. Please give the show a rating or a review wherever you get your podcasts. That helps us to be seen throughout the internet, and more people can benefit from listening to episodes like this with Jason and can learn how to be better leaders of their construction company. Hope you have a terrific day, and I'll catch you on the next episode.